Hello again, Rod.
Hello, Kim. How are you?
Clem, did you say Kim? You keep
I'm sorry. I got
all
your
right,
name in
keeping
front.
it real. You do know me, I promise.
Yeah.
So we're back chatting. We just had a little chat then before we hit record, but we're really sort of really open today to just talking about to just letting God lead, and we're going to talk sort of loosely around purpose and why we're here. But as I just was explaining to Rob, this is something that I'm constantly wrestling with. So I'm really excited to hear and chat and hear what you have to say around this subject. So we talked last time about, we did the life review, and then we talked a bit about where we could go in the many dwelling places in heaven, and we talked about the state of our hearts and our openness to God, and how both are part of that experience. And then that sort of led to naturally to the question of, okay, then if we accept that and we accept that there's more, why are we here? What's the purpose of this life? You know, it sounds amazing, so wonderful over there. Why are we here? What are we here for? And what matters? I guess what for me, it's, if the bigger question we'll maybe get to at the end is how do we prioritize our life around that, or reprioritize our life around that once we realize and understand a bit more. So why are we here, Rod?
Yeah. We're here.
What have you found out about this?
We're here. Imagine I'm gonna do two tier here. One person wants to get big muscles, wants to build up. So where will he go to? He'll go to the gym, or she will go to the gym. And they've got to actually now train at the gym. And anyone who's trained at the gym, especially if you're doing weights, it really hurts. And the pressure you build up by adding extra weight, and you start doing the exercises and it hurts, and you think, oh, is it worth it? Until you have the shower and you feel great. Yeah, I'm coming back next week or next few days. Same principle. You got to university. You've got no degree. You can do two things. You can go to the pub every night and hang out with the other people, but do no study. And at the end, you're going to get more likely a failure. Same with the guy who doesn't train at the gym. Now, the guy who's training at the gym goes through pain and discomfort. And the person who's actually at university, if they're doing well, they're going to get tired, they're going to have swap, they're going to get a bit run down. It's not going to be easy, especially if you're taking a subject like physics or something, like Caroline did. Or you can sit back and do nothing. Now, this is a school here, so we're now going to do the equivalent. We come to this earth and we get hardships. We get sorrow, we get pain, we get bereavement, we get financial problems, we get health problems. None of them are enjoyable. None like the gym, where you're really going, oh, is this worth it? Or like a university, where I was swatting up to 1, 2 in the morning. I wish I hadn't have come. But ultimately, when you get your degree, when you get your real good physique with all your lovely stomach muscles and your biceps, you go, yeah, it was worth it. Or you look in the mirror and say, I didn't do any training, I'm still a skeleton. Or you look and say, well, all that money, I didn't really swap much and I failed my degree. And that's what we're here for. The hardships, like the hardships I've mentioned, i.e. in the gym or at the university, the hardships, the late nights, the headaches, the stress, at the end when you get your diploma and you've got your degree, where you go out into the world, or you fail. And that is a parallel of what's going on here. We come here to learn to love. Love is the most important thing. It sounds easy, but it's not. So we learn to love. Now, we've got one way you can learn to love. If somebody hurts you badly, you've got to learn to forgive. Jesus, forgive. On the cross, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. So it sounds easy till someone really hurts you, and then you say, I've got to forgive them. Now, there's two ways of forgiving. One, you say you forgive them, but you haven't. Or two, you really have to work at forgiving them. But that's when we grow. That's when we get the spiritual muscles. Build up all the spiritual degree. And so the more we go through hardships in life, the stronger we get. So when we pass on to the next life, if we've got it right, or hopefully got it reasonably right, we've gone up in the afterlife, you got light, and you got some dim light. You get lighter and lighter, and really bright light, and that's how our spirits get. The more we begin to love and forgive and help other people and do all the positive things that Jesus taught, the brighter our spirit is going to glow when it leaves our body. So now, in my Father's house are many mansions. So if you've got just a dim light, you're going to be in the mansion for dimmer lights. But if you've got a really, really, yeah, you got it. And if you go into the really, really bright light, you're going into the higher mansions. And when some people are really in the darkness, those people like Howard Storm saw, you're going to the lowest realm. So you come here to build up your spiritual muscles. Hence, that's what we're here for. Does that help?
All of love.
Yeah.
Wow.
With a lot of hardship.
It's so funny you've started with that story. I'm sitting here thinking, oh my goodness, I'm so in the right place. Because I got up at 6:30 this morning to do a class and did boxing last night. And I was literally in the shower thinking, God, why am I doing this again? Oh,
exactly.
Straight to my my questions then.
You can relate to exactly what I'm on about them.
But building those physical muscles actually helps strengthen me to build the other things as well, rather than just lethargic.
Yeah, I do exactly the same. I mean, I train every day, so I can relate immediately to when I'm really working hard and my arms are really aching. I've got to get that last rep out. That's the one that hurts. That's the one that's actually going to build the muscle. And it's the same with life. When you're going through the hardships, you know, I can't go anymore. I can't. But that last bit you can get through, build your strength, build your muscles, and you become lighter, spiritually lighter.
I've been listening to a fitness guy, and he talks a lot about we as humans, we need a stimulus, like we need something to push against.
Yes, we do. Yeah, so resistance
in all of that. So to grow. If we're too comfortable, he's talking about sofa, you know, all these comfort measures we have in society today, and comfortable exercise and comfortable that he said we're just devolving. We actually need stimulus to grow, to stay strong, to I guess in the all elements. So in the spiritual as well. So that would be the opposition.
Yeah, because you got no opposition in heaven. It's perfect. It's all perfect up there. So until you come down here, you can't get opposition. So if you want to progress, you can't really progress as much. This is a place to really learn, because ultimately this is where all the pressure is going to come in. This is where you get your big spiritual workout, where you go, oh, I don't know if I can carry on with this. Oh, I don't know if I can forgive that person. Oh, I don't know. Here we go. Oh, how can I love that person? They've been really horrible to me. So it's easy to love the nice people, not so easy to love the people who have really been nasty, is it?
Yes. Yeah, I know. I was talking, my friend watched our last chat and we were talking about loving the least of those. And she, the same as me, was like, I'd always thought of it as,
You've got to love the least. You've got to look through history and say, who is the least hardest person to love? And then when you can find them, we're all going to might have different people. But when you find the least, that's what Jesus was talking about. The least of these. Because when I was in prison, you visited me. So, I mean, you've only got to look on the news recently and see some terrible, terrible things have happened to people. And those people have gone to prison. And you could say, could I go and visit that person in prison? When I was in prison, you visited me. So ultimately, if you're going into prison and visiting the worst person you can think of, and there's been quite a few in the news recently, you're going to visit Jesus. He said, that's what he said.
That's where you really get your spiritual muscles.
And that's where you build your spiritual muscles. Hence, that's what we're here for. We couldn't do that in heaven.
Okay, so something around spiritual growth. So there's that sort of individual school of love. We're here to build our spiritual muscles. That's very sort of like about us as individual spirits. Well, what about, how does, then we've got, obviously, then I always think, well, we've got the bigger picture of like the story, the biggest story that we're in, that the Bible tells us about the sort of spiritual war that we're in, how how time pans out.
Yeah.
Is that all? I guess is that all the curriculum?
Yeah, because also we've got to remember in the Lord's Prayer it says, "Thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven."
Mm.
So we've really got to be building the kingdom of heaven on earth, haven't we?
So that's all. Yeah. So the curriculum being.
Yeah, the curriculum are we're builders.
This is the story you can engage with to build those spiritual muscles.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, St. Paul says we don't fight against flesh and blood, spiritual forces and such. So ultimately, every time we get somebody who's coming against us, we've really got a spiritual force we're fighting. That person may be flesh and blood, but that person who's being nasty, who's being arrogant, who's being downright horrible, that's a darkness fighting the light.
And that's our opportunity. So rather than seeing that as a victim attack, that's an opportunity to grow. As a gift.
Yeah, to grow. That's a gift. So now all of a sudden you've got the gift of I don't like this person, but I've got to love them. Wow. That's a good workout for the day. I've got to love this person, and I've got to try but that doesn't mean you've got to be a doormat. That means you've got to be, you've got to keep all the spiritual high standards. You haven't got to lower your guard and say, oh yeah, well, they may be saying something really terrible or pushing a point where you say, this is terrible. You don't love, as they often say, you don't love the sin, you love the person. So ultimately, you still stand your ground and say, no, this is wrong, but you still love them because you can also bring in tough love. Because, I mean, Jesus used tough love. If you look at the Gospels, there was a lot of tough love going on. I mean, he was driving the moneylenders out with a whip, wasn't he, out of the temple?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I've been listening to some Betty Eady podcasts and things recently. She actually prefers to use the word opposition to evil, which is really helpful. If you read anything you read, if you then switch that language, that helps keep you in that mindset of not being a victim, I guess, or being victimized by it.
You're not a victim. In fact, Jesus won the battle. Jesus won the battle on Calvary. Ultimately, we are, the victors, and ultimately we already won the battle, but we're still fighting the war. But we've actually won. Sorry, we're fighting the battle, but we've actually won the war.
So just my brain's going to current events and the current sort of division and darkness that's in the world right now.
Yep.
And so many that see it a certain way, but are in fear and overwhelm, as I am, and on certain days. We can change that, really. We don't have to be in fear of that at all.
I mean, again, getting back to the Bible, it says God has not given you the spirit of fear.
So to see it as a position, to see it as training, to see it as
it's
a necessary part.
Spiritual workout. It's a spiritual workout. It's the best way to look at it. So now you've got the opposition coming, you've got the resistance, as we're saying, you've got to push back. Oh, this is really hard. But when you're pushing back, your muscles are growing. So you can say my spiritual muscles are growing, my light is becoming lighter, and I'm pushing back, and I'm not going to back off, and I'm not going to back down, because ultimately, you're in the right. I don't think, somebody said recently, I was talking to Caroline about it last night, they talk about the left and the right. I don't think left and right anymore. No matter what side you're on, it's not left and it's not right. It's good and it's bad. Forget in politics, it's either good or it's bad.
Right. And there's good and bad in left and there's good and bad in right. Do you mean?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Because ultimately, if for argument's sake, I mean, obviously, I use abortion. It's quite a powerful thing, but abortion, for argument's sake, anybody who, it's not difficult to say that which is right and which is wrong. If you just want to get rid of a child because it's not convenient, Oh, that's not a good thing. So it's not a political. It could be any side. It's either good or it's bad.
Right. But getting people to agree on that, there's the problem.
Well, this is it ultimately. But that is the point. That's the opposition.
And the training, I guess, the training ground for love, because actually in those divisive issues is the hard, I guess, the least of those. Like, it's the hardest place to love. If you can still love someone that is doing the complete opposite of what you feel is good.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where the spirit, that's where you're growing.
Again, yeah, exactly. Because as I said this now, you hate the sin. You love the person. So if someone did have an abortion, you don't hate the person, but you hate what they did.
Right. And the challenge is then not being judgmental, not being
well, when I say not judgmental, well, you got to make a judgment. What would Jesus say? Suffer the little children to come unto me. So he I mean, when he caught the woman in adultery, he said, where are your accusers? And she said, oh, they've gone. And he said, go. And then he said, sin no more. So he made a judgment there.
Yeah, but a judgment is different to a judgment, but loving someone is different to judging someone, isn't it? Or being judgmental.
Yeah. All right. And so when someone has done something which is, not really good for them and themselves, in fact, not good for themselves, you could obviously, I'm symbolically saying this now, but you wouldn't say, oh yeah, it's okay to do it again and again and again and again. It would be go, but sin no more.
So you have a judgment on it. Yeah.
So you would have a judgment on it, because the Bible teaches you, a lot of people tell you shouldn't judge because you're a Christian, but they forget what carried on after that bit.
Okay.
You said, take the plank out your own eye before you tell your brother to take it out of his eye. So a lot of people think, oh, well, they go as far as taking out your own eye, but they don't carry on and see what he said afterwards before you tell your brother.
So taking out your own eye is...
So ultimately, if I was doing something really outlandish and I'm telling somebody else to do it, I'd have to sort myself out, my own problems, before I tell my brother to sort his out.
Yeah.
So get yourself sorted out beforehand, then tell your brother.
But not many of us get past that bit.
No, but
in order to be able to...
But this is the opposition. This is the opposition we do to growth. Because ultimately, if you see someone and you love them, which we're back to love, if you love someone and you see them doing something we know it's going to hurt them spiritually or physically, you should tell them. If I see someone who's involved, I had a friend many years ago, well, not so many years ago, who was an alcoholic. Now, I couldn't condone it because it's destroying him.
Yeah.
So it is, in killing him physically and also destroying relationships. So you can't just condone it. So I love you, carry on drinking.
So what would you communicate that?
Yeah.
Love, but and love him at the same time.
Yeah. Sometimes it might have to be, not mamby-pamby. It might have to be a tough love. But the ultimate love is, like God's got tough love. And people forget that God can be pretty tough if he wants to. I mean, Jesus, he didn't mince his words with the Pharisees, did he?
And I guess, if I'm honest, what I would notice I would do, which is not the right way, would be to just push that person away. Because it's so difficult to to have that conversation and love them anyway, that actually you can end up sort of passively judging and just pushing them out of your life, which I guess is not doing the work, is it?
Not necessarily. If they're causing havoc.
Oh yeah.
Within you, say hypothetically within your family or with you, sometimes to get distance and say, look, I've got to back off here because you're creating this problem. That's okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think Betty Eddy mentioned something similar, and I know Howard Storm did. Getting distance between people who are destructive. So when we talk of love, it's multifaceted. It's like bringing children up. You know better than me. Sometimes you've got to be firm.
Yeah.
And sometimes
Well, I
it's
think,
not all,
yeah,
it's not
what
all
I sort of, the rule of
cuddles.
thumb I go by is boundaries with
Yes.
communication.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
I find the communication is the sort of punishment seems to be just the punishment, but like boundaries with explanation and communication. I guess that's the love bit.
That's great. That's how you learn, and that's how you grow. You grow because ultimately you're saying, you know, this, and this is creating these problems, and that's not acceptable.
Mm.
Then they can learn and understand rather than just, as you say, punishment.
Rather than just being angry and then
anger's no good.
Response from that.
Yeah. Anger is not any good. No.
Mm. That's very interesting. It's taken me off on a different thought process.
I said, didn't I? I said we were
Yeah.
going.
So on spiritual growth, the biggest story. That was the other element in it. So they're more sort of general, the school of love. But what about this thing that always comes up about us having a specific purpose for us?
Yeah.
So like that we're all here. What is your purpose? What's my purpose? Like we're all here with a purpose given by God.
Yes.
And then that versus free will, which I have something I read actually this morning that's maybe about that. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we've all got a purpose ultimately. What you really, really love, quite likely, should be what you should be doing, what God wants you to do. And what you really, really hate, if you were, I'm talking about a job, hypothetically, if I was doing a job that I really, really, really hated, that more is not what God wants me to do. He wants me to do what I really, really love. And now your job may be not what you earn your living for. I mean, St. Paul was a tent maker and saddle maker. So he didn't, but he also, his main job was to evangelize and open churches. So you could actually be doing a job purely to finance you, but your real job would be what you're doing now, hypothetically, what you're doing now at this very moment.
Is that his, did he do that all the way through? I've never thought about that. Paul.
Oh yeah, Paul
worked.
We often say he was a tent maker, but ultimately he was a saddle maker. He made saddles and tents, but they often forget his saddles.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I think in this world we can limit purpose. I see purpose being bandied around, like in terms of what you do for a living, and you know what you're meant to be doing. And it might be, I've heard Edie talk about, it might be one person that you were destined to,
that's right, to me,
help in a particular situation.
Yeah. It could be something very, 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 very simple. Like you might just, it's a long story. I don't know if I've got time to tell you. I'll condense it. I'll condense it. Many years ago, when I was in the police, I met a guy and became friendly. He chatted to me every day. He was a lovely man. And we became good friends. He'd stop and chat 20 minutes. And on the way home, he'd bump into me. I was out on the beat and he would chat to me. And he went away. He went over to, I think, France, and he to work for this company where he was already at. And I hadn't seen him for 3 or 4 years. And then I bumped into him one day and he said, hello. And I knew there was something wrong with him. We were out in the street. And he burst into tears. And I thought, oh, dear. I didn't know I was going to have that effect on him. And he told me that he'd got a lot of debts. He's got a lot of debts. And I said, oh, yeah. So I ushered him into this little place that I knew I could get him off the street. And we chatted, and I said, look, I gave him my phone number at the police station. I said, look, just give me a ring if things are going wrong. Anyway, a couple of days later, I was actually in the police station, in the office, which I hated, in the main take in lost property, lost children, you name it. And it was chaos. It was utter chaos. They had the Queen's Garden Party on, and it was hot, and the radios were going and the phones were going, and it was really bad. And I picked up the phone. It was him. And I thought, oh my goodness. So obviously I didn't have a lot of time because it was chaos in this office and I was sort of in charge of it. So I said, look, he said he felt suicidal. And I said, no, just don't do this. And we chatted briefly. And I said, look, I'll get back to you. Anyway, he sees me later, a few days later, and he told me the story. And he said, when I put the phone down, he said, I was on Westminster Bridge and I was just going to jump. And he said, your friend, another friend of yours, a policeman, was walking towards me and he knew him. And so by him seeing that policeman, it prevented him jumping. So he went home. Remember, he was in debt. He went home to his lodgings where his flatmates were. And they said, we've had, I think it was Littlewoods. We've had Littlewoods. A man from Littlewoods who wants to see you. And he thought they were joking. He won £1 million. So if he'd have jumped off that bridge, think about it. See my point? Yeah. He even offered me a job. Yeah. That's a true story. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's an example of
a moment in time.
Yeah. That answered it in a real life situation. And in fact, I've been trying to get in touch with him, but I can't remember his second name. It's so frustrating.
Oh.
Yeah. But if he'd have jumped off that bridge due to his debt, he'd have won £1 million. So, and then he went and bought a business.
Wow.
Yeah. And offered me a job, which I'll say I remember ever so well. Though it was a nice happy ending. But if he'd have jumped,
yeah, and just used in those little things.
Yes, and if he hadn't have seen that policeman walking towards him at that right time, remember that right time? I even know the policeman.
Our purpose that's limited, like been reduced to just our career, is actually could even be purposes.
Oh, like, yeah.
It's not this one thing that we're constantly trying to chase down and narrow down.
No, not at all. Not at all, no. But that was getting back to meeting somebody just by, like we were saying, meeting someone. I just met him out when I was on the beat, this guy.
Yeah.
If I hadn't met him, we wouldn't have had all those train of circumstances all the way up to the, he rung me up where he was on Westminster Bridge. He saw the policeman walking towards him. He recognised he was a friend of mine. So he didn't jump. He went home.
Well, that verse has become that Bible verse that says all things work together for the good of those that trust. Well, I think it says fear God, but I hear it as trust God.
It's trust.
So when you're trusting the process, and all those little things just get knitted together.
Yeah. Please. It's all right. I've been enough for a cup of tea.
Good, nice.
I said yes, please. And so what? All these little things get knitted together. You've hit the nail on the head. It's so well orchestrated, but we've still got free will. It's orchestrated to our advantage, but if we don't take advantage of it and we misuse our free will, that's where it comes unstuck.
It might be worth reading this little bit that I've just tagged as under free will from Howard Storm.
Yeah.
He says, it's in the chapter, Why We Are the Way We Are. The angels and Jesus explained to me this way. God's love is like a family. When a child is born, the parents make its home as safe as possible to protect the baby. They attend to every need of the baby. As the baby becomes an infant, the parents keep it from harm and try to teach it to be aware of the needs of others. As the infant grows and becomes an adolescent, the parents struggle to impose safe limitations on the child's exposure to danger and provide it with significant life experiences to equip it for adulthood. Most parents have wished they could keep their child safe from harm forever, but the parent knows that to love your child, you can only equip them for life and then out of love, let them go.
Yes.
Parents can never stop loving their child. No matter what happens, the child becomes an adolescent, an adult capable of pleasing the parents or disappointing and hurting them. The parents try to influence but not control what their mature children do. And that's, I think, always been the way I've understood free will. God gives us, he couldn't love us and not give us free will.
No, because we'll be robots.
we'd just be locked in a,
Yeah,
yeah.
it'd be
I did that
robots.
with my kids. I'd just be locked in a room
Yeah,
for the rest of their life.
yeah,
It wouldn't be.
yeah. I mean, free will. You can only, we couldn't love God if we didn't have free will.
Mm.
Because if he forced us, it's like having a relationship with someone, and the guy or the woman would turn around and say, "You're going to love me, or else I'm going to," you go, "All right, I love you. I love you." Not really. You're fearful, and we're getting back to fear. We mentioned the word fear just now.
Mm.
That word fear, sadly, is misunderstood by many. It's more like respecting.
Yeah.
Respecting someone, you respect them rather than fear them, because
Yeah.
that over the years people say, "Oh, what type of God is this? He wants us to fear him." Well, sadly, if you go right, you've got to go right the way back to the original Greek, which is worth doing. And there's so many words where you go, "Oh wow," it's not at all like that. It's like fire. We talk about fire.
Yeah.
The word fire. But
So
the burning.
what was the original? Do you know off your head, like for fear? How has fear been what was?
It's more the best way to. It's more like respect.
Yeah, more okay.
Yeah, respect your parents. You respect your parents. You respect them. I wouldn't want to hurt. You say, "Oh, I wouldn't want to hurt my mum because I respect her too much to hurt her," rather than I want to hurt my mum.
Prioritizing.
Her too much to hurt her. You wouldn't say I fear her. Hopefully not.
Yeah.
I wouldn't fear my mum too much to hurt her. I respect my mum too much to hurt her. It's more of respect.
Yeah.
And the fear, sadly, that word fear is what's happened. You see, the original Greek, when they spoke to the early church, they understood it because it was in their own language. And then it gets progressively. It's like the word hell. The word hell has been so misused in the Bible. Hell. I mean, I think it's Strong's. I think they've literally got rid of it now. You've got Hades, which is the place of the dead. When Jesus after being crucified, in the 3 days he went into Hades and preached to the dead. Well, a lot of verses say he went into hell and preached to the dead. But if you go to the original, it was not hell. They didn't have a word, so they ended up putting the word hell there, and then the word fear. And so a lot of people are being, I don't mean intentionally misled, but they think, "Oh, I don't like this God. He's going to hell. You've got to fear him." Got to love.
Yeah. It's really the language. Yeah, it's really frustratingly blocking. When I come read a bit, I really like to. I've got a thing on my app that compares the translation. So if there's a verse that's like, "Oh, I can't. That doesn't feel right." I compare and then I read like a number of different translations, and then sort of you get more of a feel for.
Well, this is a beauty. I think this is another reason why I think that the near-death experiences are coming more and more and more. In the last days I will pour out my spirit. I think the reason is because God is showing people. A lot of people have had a near-death experience and been shocked. I think Betty was, how loving God was. Couldn't believe, wow, this is not what I expected. You're really, really loving. Because they'd been brought up with the old idea of fear, to fear God and hell. But if you start going through the original scriptures, going right the way back, it was like respect and Hades, place of the dead. We've got rid of hell and we've got rid of fear. So it's worth going back and saying, what did that originally mean to the people at the time?
And a few, I can't remember which specifically, but quite a few of them near-death experiences that Jesus has sent them back specifically with the message to tell my people I love them. I'm being misrepresented. Like actually being quite specific about that.
You see, Jesus always corrected things, didn't he? I mean, he said when he was, he was correcting some of the scribes and the Pharisees, where you used to be told to hate people, and he said, no, you got to love them. people who are persecuting you. Love people who persecute you. What, you know? And how many times do you, they used to say, forgive them 7 times. How many times do you forgive? 70 times 7. He was always correcting, updating. If, you know,
that's actually all he was doing, really. He was,
well, that was the idea.
correcting the misunderstandings
Yes.
that were before him. Yeah.
I mean, that was the idea, that he was coming here to say, when they said, what is God like? He said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Wow. Shock.
Because I did not come here to judge. Yeah.
Exactly. And he said also that all of the laws were fulfilled in loving your neighbor and loving God with all your heart, all your soul, your mind, strength, loving your neighbor as yourself. If you could just do those things that he said, everything would be there. Everything.
Gosh, you managed to make it sound so simple. I've only been wrestling it for years.
Yeah, because the hardest thing is what we got back to. It sounds simple to say, you know, love God with all your heart, all your strength, all your mind, and or love your neighbor as yourself. Oh, he said, oh, that's no problem. After a week, you realize, wow, that's a lifetime's problem.
Yeah. Trust it. Yeah, trust that the money's going to come in the bank.
Yeah. So it is simple, but it's not simple. No, it's simple, but it's not easy.
Just there's another little story here. I think this was something I read linking into what we were talking about in being a school of love, and in something Betty said in the chat I listened to the other day. She was talking about purpose, and she said that our purpose is to acquire the attributes of God. So that being unconditional love, patience, forgiveness, for what we see in Jesus, I guess, to develop those further. So yeah, just thinking on that, and that you've said the same. And then this little story from the book, again from the children's.
Hold closer to the light. Melvin Morse. Yeah, Melvin Morse, that one.
Yeah, so this MD, this doctor, went back. He did a study on these children, and then at the end of the book, he goes back to their lives when they're older, when they're adults, and sees in his reporting on the impact that the NDE had on their life and their family. So I thought this was interesting in terms of, so why do NDEs matter? Why are we sat? What difference do these NDE experiences make in people's lives, and even our lives, just learning about them? So I'll read it anyway. Dean, I'll read it all there. So Dean, patient 3 in this previous study, has now had 2 NDEs, coupled with his chronic kidney problems, helped him put his life into perspective. Once the rebel of the family, Dean has now embraced his family's faith in Christ, becoming a devout Christian. His transformation has helped his family deal with the incredible strain of raising children with kidney problems. His younger brother died of kidney failure, and to stay alive, he and his sister spend 12 to 18 hours a week attached to a home dialysis machine. The divorce rate in such situations is well over 75%, yet this family, for all intents and purposes, lead a fairly normal life. Have Dean's NDEs helped them achieve that normalcy? Dean says, these things have helped me gain comfort through God. Can you feel it? He says, the Spirit is everywhere in this house. I have to admit that I did feel a rare spirit of family and joy with these fine people. These children have grown up to become remarkable teenagers, not rocket scientists, not high priests, just positive, upbeat kids with a joy that is inspiring. They haven't become involved in drugs or alcohol, and according to their parents, rarely get out of line. Their actions speak louder than words about the reality of near-death experience. I just thought that was really...
Yeah, exactly.
Reminder of that it's actually the small things
Yeah, it's the small stuff, the real small stuff, but they add up to big things.
Mm,
Because ultimately, if you took all those small things, you could have a dysfunctional family. If you
mm.
took, but all the small things add up to a functional family under the circumstances, doesn't it?
Yeah, under
Yeah,
extreme
yeah,
pressure. That
exactly.
could,
So,
yeah, could very much go.
so all these small things give a foundation to building a functional family. Whereas if you didn't have that foundation, it could collapse.
Mm, yeah, very interesting. Just had a thought then. No, you were a few of the other questions that I had. You've almost answered with such a clear, a clear explanation of the school of love, really.
Yes,
Um, that it's all, yeah, because there's much. I was thinking more like I was thinking about, or I've been wrestling with maybe the more the like individual developing those attributes, that side of life,
yes.
and staying focused on the good and love, but also in a world where there's so much distraction and I guess battles to fight. There's
There is.
obviously the spiritual, but even it just in the world right now, you could step into many battlegrounds, for justice or for good, or and how much of is the balance between that, I guess, is something I wrestle with. I find it much easier to build my personal attributes
Yeah.
with my family,
Yes.
and create that sort of world. But how
Yes.
much does God, and I know that there's a ripple effect of that, but also how much is there that we are meant to engage with out there, on the battlefield, I guess.
I think it'll be put across your pathway what you've got to engage with. I don't think you've got to go running out looking for it.
Mm.
Literally come across your, be put across, as you say, like people come across your pathway in life.
Mm.
I think circumstances. I mean, even what you're doing with these videos you're doing are fighting a battle.
Mm. Yeah, I guess it's in this day and age when you can log on and you can be
Yeah,
drawn
yeah,
into every
yeah. All
every
around the world,
battle.
around the world. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
hard to know to stay focused and here, I guess, where you're meant to be.
I mean, all exactly. You've hit the nail because you've been given you have because the way God's used you with the dream, so forth, and your daughter's picture of the apples and the tree of life. It all adds up, doesn't it? But I mean, all the disharmony in the world, as Betty said, she was shown there was a matrix around the world,
Mm.
and the matrix around the world was catching all the hate and disharmony. It was catching it as it was going up, and imagine it was like a net caught all the hatred and disharmony, and all the problems that come on the world, like diseases and so forth, are the result of the ripple effect of the hate and the anger and all the terrible negative forces that have been going up.
So
She was shown it.
creating more love, creating more harmony,
Yes,
growing
yes,
your personal attributes are the best
yes.
counter ripple.
I'll tell you, roughly 1979, I think it was called Margot Gray wrote it. I've still got the book. It was way back in 1979. I was studying NDEs then, but even before then. But she wrote this book where people were coming back and they were telling people if we turn to God and start praying, we can avoid all that we're going through now. We could avoid. But if we don't, it's going to get really, really bad.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, it's got really, really bad because we didn't do what. So there's a prime example. We could have been having blessings coming down now.
Okay, so that leads me to another question. So is there a difference? Because I hear a lot in the more sort of new age world that if we stay positive and we keep our vibration high, that is going to turn the tide, which is sort of similar to what you're saying maybe it is the same, but there's some tension between those two schools of thought. So it's like everyone stays positive, ignore, don't give any energy or any thought to the darkness, or evil. Evil maybe even doesn't exist in that, I guess that's what, but
There's your stumbling block. There's your stumbling block.
the evil doesn't exist. I don't know about that bit.
Now they're actually contradicting Jesus.
Okay. Because, okay, I guess because that is self-focused, whereas the ripple effect is loving other focused. Is that?
Yeah, you see, there's how I look at it, there is a test that the Bible gives to test to see what the spirit is. If they acknowledge that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh and so forth, I'm talking about the New Ages.
Yeah.
If they acknowledge about Jesus, then they've got one choice. They're either going to be a follower of Jesus, because ultimately, if they saying he was God incarnate and so forth, but if they're saying he's not,
well, what if they don't know yet?
but that's what I'm getting
What if
at.
they haven't met him yet? Yeah, but they don't.
But they can't marry, because if they're just going to be positive, this day, oh, I'm going to be positive. Well, that hasn't worked. I mean,
No.
the new age was saying that.
There's not enough people being positive.
Exactly. I mean, in the 60s, the Flower Power, they were saying this.
Right.
All I'm saying is that hasn't worked. So no, it just failed miserably. The only real answer really is Jesus, because he said, you know, he is the door, and there is their problem. They have difficulty with Jesus. They give him, you know, I tell you, he was a very a great master. If you're lucky, he's a great master. No, he wasn't. He was a lot more than a great master. I mean, my goodness, you know, you see me, you've seen the Father. What a statement. That got him crucified.
But why? Why? I know I've gone through this question in my head 1,000 times, and I get, but so yeah, why? I guess that's the opposite. Well, in terms of the context of what we're talking about now,
God wants people to return to him. He wants them to pray and return to him. He wants to draw people back to him. And so unless we actually get back to God, if we had got back to God when Margaret Gray wrote this book in 79, I mean, they even had in it that there was going to be an assassination attempt on the Pope.
Margaret Gray, I haven't heard this one.
Margot, M-A-R-G-O-T, Margot Gray. Yeah, I heard her speak once at Guy's Hospital. So she was an India herself. So ultimately, the positive thinking, it's not going to be ultimately what's going to save the world. It's going to be a facet of it. Jesus didn't really teach positive thinking. He taught faith, which is slightly different. Your faith has made you whole. If you have enough faith the size of a mustard seed. Now, I mean, an atheist, or in fact, a Satanist can use positive thinking.
So it's almost, there is a lot of truth in that, but it's missing.
Yes.
It's a lie. It's that
Yes.
it's missing.
It's missing a lot.
Which actually then brings us back to some part of our purpose that we haven't talked about.
Yeah.
Remembering God.
Remembering, don't leave God out of it. This is a big problem.
We can grow, we can develop our character, we can engage in the world around us, but actually, like, what part is knowing Jesus in that?
Exactly. I mean, exactly. If you don't know Jesus, you've got a problem. Because if you don't know Jesus, you don't know God.
But what if you do all those other things really well?
That's good. But if you can't leave the main, I mean, you can't really leave God out of it.
The creator of the story.
Exactly. You can't leave the creator of the story out of it. Perfect. If you leave the creator, it's like your daughters really being successful, but completely ignoring you. It's not very good, is it? You see my point? You go, oh, what's going on here? Although they've done this, they've done that, Never speak to mum, never want to know mum. You know, doing great. So ultimately, because we're God's children, so he wants a relationship with us. So if we don't have a relationship, and the best way to have a relationship with him, obviously, is through Jesus. But Jesus said, "No one comes to the Father except through me."
So the opposition, let's say, instead of evil, existing with their main purpose is to give us resistance on developing our attributes.
Yes.
And give us resistance on finding God.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They're the two main purposes of opposition of evil.
Yeah. You got the spirit of the Antichrist, which Peter talks about, the spirit of the Antichrist and the spirit of Christ. I mean, if directly someone rejects Jesus, they obviously, I don't mean the word Antichrist brings out, oh, terrible. They're not terrible, but if they're rejecting Jesus, they must be Antichrist, logically. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying they are the Antichrist. I'm saying the spirit they're listening to is of the Antichrist. Mm-hmm. So you could say, oh, he's a good teacher. I think he's a bit more than a good teacher, because he came back from the dead after 3 days and told people he was going to.
Yeah, so so ignoring that is really ignoring.
Yeah, so you've got
it's ignoring the whole story, really, isn't it?
You see, again, a lot of people forget that when everybody dies, everybody we can think of, New Agers, atheists, in-betweeners, agnostics, we all go into the spiritual world. This is where people forget, yeah, they're going to go into a spiritual world, because they are. What part and where are they at? And have they missed out a lot by rejecting Jesus, who came down to be with his people?
Okay, that's interesting. So there's almost by being held in that place of just positive thinking and still denying Jesus or denying the creator of the story, you could end up in a place without them, which isn't good.
I mean, a lot of them talk about source.
Yeah.
Source, but they really don't like to use that word God.
But wouldn't that not be this? Would they not? So that then transfers into the afterlife.
Yeah.
They not recognize God as source.
Yeah, but ultimately, if for argument's sake, if you're doing, say, a deliverance ministry, and the Spirit will not say the word Jesus or God, that's a problem.
That's interesting. Tell me more about that. What do you mean?
Well, if there was
the word source doesn't do anything.
Well, source is skirting around it a bit, isn't it?
Right. So it's almost like, what's the deeper denial that's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many sources as well. If you think about it, I mean, theoretically, what source? What source are you
talking about? It's not just a word. It's actually like, why are you using that word? What's influencing you?
Why are you having difficulty not saying? I mean, some people call it the one, but there's always been this. I've spoke to them before, and don't get me wrong, I've got friends who are into New Age, but they have difficulty with Jesus, which means if they have difficulty with Jesus, they've got to have difficulty with God, because God was Jesus and Jesus was God.
I think a lot of people would say they have difficulty because of religion. That would be mostly what I've come across is the baggage of religion that makes them.
I agree with that. But why are they rejecting Jesus if they had problems with religion?
Well, because he's got so tied up with it, isn't it?
Yeah, but they're still rejecting him.
But so actually, when it comes to your life review, consequences, afterlife, it doesn't really matter. Like your growth is in getting over that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if like Howard shouted out to Jesus, many people have shouted out Jesus, and he's always come. But if you don't like using that word in life, why would you use it in death? I mean, I'm not being funny here, but I don't know if anyone shouted out.
Well, some people might very quickly get over themselves.
Yeah. But I mean,
maybe they were right about.
Yeah, you could be going and saying source. I don't know if that would be as effective, but
But they might very quickly go, remember, oh, there was that annoying person that always used to go on about Jesus. I'll try that.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not having a go at them. I'm just trying to point out that there's a lot lacking there. Because if you're just trying to become I mean, I hear people say we're gods.
No, yeah.
We're not God. We're definitely not God.
No, it's really, really interesting to think about. It's not just the language we use. It's actually what's behind that language issue. Like what's behind that.
That's exactly the energy. The energy.
Yeah. You can say you call it God, I'll call it this, but actually there's a reason behind that, and that's likely emotional, spiritual, and that's going to carry through.
You've hit the nail on. That's exactly what I was trying to say. There is a reason. It's the energy behind it that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's exactly the energy that behind it is that the wall appears to be built.
Okay, so evil's purpose being to keep us behind those walls.
Yes, because if I mean, I've met some people who are really, really, really anti-Jesus. Mike, I think why? What did he do? He went around forgiving people, healing people, telling people to love each other.
But it's really, there's probably a spiritual element. It's mostly religion, isn't it? It's mostly their issues with religion or division or.
Their problem is not with Jesus and not with Christianity. It might be with the religion, but religion isn't Jesus, and religion isn't Christianity.
Well, that's really my main reason for what I think NDEs are so amazing.
Yeah, this is why
I think they introduce people that have a strong aversion to religion and church introduce them to Jesus without all of that.
That's why I think they come.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, I agree completely. Without a doubt, because ultimately he had to break through, and it says in the scripture that in the last days he'll pour out his spirit, and I think that is part of it.
I can't remember the quote. Akiani says something, because people are always the young girl that does the paintings.
Yeah, done the painting.
When she was younger, and people always were hounding her, like, "What religion are you? What?" And she said, "I don't have a religion.
No.
I believe God is my teacher," something like that. God is my religion. And she said something. They said, "But so many things have been done in the name of Jesus that are awful to humanity."
But that's not Jesus'
fault.
She
said Jesus is perfect peace. I can't remember the end of the line, but it was something like, people do awful things in the name of, people can dirty.
Yeah.
You can have a beautiful leg and people can dirty it.
Yeah, you can't. You can't blame Jesus because someone does something in his name, right? He didn't say, in the he'd say to some people when they were there, when they said, "Oh, we did this and we did that," he said, "Depart from me, I never knew you." And so there's a prime example where he wouldn't be agreeing with what they've been doing in his name,
even though it's in his name. Yeah.
No, it's in his name. In fact, it's the worst thing you could do in his name. Something terrible.
Yeah. Not sure how we got onto that one.
I said it always going to flow with.
It's always a good sign. We don't know how we got there. No. Just thinking. Oh, I know, because I was asking about how actually knowing God, finding God, is a big part of our purpose. There's almost like, there seems to be sort of two elements to everything. Like there's individual growth for the bigger story. There's always these free will, but his will, there's always this tension between
what we want to do and what he wants to do. In fact, that battle is on all the time. Oh my goodness, if you think all the time there's this battle, going on.
Mm.
Oh, it's so easy to do what we want to do.
So I've got a closing question, which might be the right time, really. Thinking if there was anything else to read out. Well, one last thing I flagged actually in Betty Eadie's book was sort of encouraging us really, and encouraging people, anyone watching, to just keep asking more questions and seeking more knowledge. And she just wrote here, the more knowledge I receive, the more I understand my own spirituality and the spirituality of others. The more, once you become aware of something, it opens the door and it draws you into its knowledge. You walk through that door and then there are more doors you have to choose among. You select another door and walk through that one, and even more doors. It's a constant challenge and a constant process, each door leading to others the next time. I've learned to always look for the next door, and wherever we reach a point where we think we are fully developed spiritually, we must be careful. There's no reason to want to stop developing spiritually, because the wonders for each door are more beautiful than the next. Our journeys are their own rewards, and we must never cease to seek more truth and knowledge and understanding of God and his love. That's
perfect. That's
an
perfect.
encouragement. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. It's always going to be slogging away to the end. Like I fought I run the race, I fought the fight right at the end, because he was tired and worn out. And
right sometimes I think, and the world tells you, oh, just stop asking, stop asking so many questions. Just
keep asking.
But I can't stop. It's in my head.
Jesus told us to, didn't he? He said, knock. You said knock. Ask. He actually says it in Scripture.
And
so you're doing right.
And not staying in our. Oh, that's in this one here. Too often we claim God's love for our closed group. There's no difference how big or small the group is. We exclude everyone outside the group if we define it as being outside God's love. This is opposed to God's will. God loves everyone beyond anything we can imagine.
Exactly. I agree completely.
That's Howard Storm.
Yep.
So just both being really a reminder to just keep questioning. Like, God's bigger than we can ever, whatever safety box we can put around him.
You can't put him in the tube. You can't put him in the tube. It's massive.
Yeah.
It's got to be.
Okay. And a closing question for you. What have I written here? You've probably covered it. Let me just check. I've put, with current times in mind, how do the things that we've discussed help in all of our talks, help us reprioritize our life? Where do we go from here? Are there any sort of next steps?
With the current times?
With the current times in mind, yeah. How I guess that's irrelevant, it can be, but how does this knowledge around NDEs and these stories help us reprioritize?
Well, I think what we're going to watch now at the moment, that all the teachings of Jesus and the Bible and all that goes with it, love, forgiveness, we've got to watch that we're not being, and also you more than ever, I feel, with children, you've got to protect the children, because there are people out there trying to literally brainwash them into thinking things that I don't think's healthy. I haven't got children, but I know you, luckily I'm school, but I know people have, and the children are coming home and saying, we were told this today, and what, very worrying, because ultimately when you and I are gone, the future would be very dark for people if they got that mindset. I do believe with the current times, you've got to watch, because ultimately the powers of darkness, as Betty was shown, are sweeping in and trying to destroy families. Because families are a structure to countries. If you destroy families, you destroy countries. And
the ripple effect of the love that starts from families is
go out.
Never ending.
Exactly.
So prioritize family and loving well the people around us.
Yeah, and always I say love them, but doesn't mean you've got to accept their dark ideas.
Mm. Well, there was.
Remember, sorry, butting in on you.
Oh,
Remember,
okay.
we got to try and never let people drag us down. We've got to try and drag them up towards God. Because sometimes they try and drag us down away from God. We've got to drag them up towards God.
Yes, that was what Betty's answer to one of my questions was.
Ah,
Point really in the most loving and like always just pointing and drawing attention to the higher ground.
yes, you got to. Otherwise, we're going to be.
That's what my sort of
Be in
mission
the
mantra.
world,
Just keep
be in the world,
pointing.
don't be part of it. That's what Jesus. Be in this world, but don't be part of it. St. Paul. So we've got to be in the world, but we haven't got to be. I think the word was don't be molded. If you go back to the Greek, don't be molded to it. So we've got to stay in the God mold rather than the mold they want to put us in. Because there's a lot of people out there with molds at the moment with mad ideas.
Which again is about back to the first thing we talked about the resistance and like the exercise. Like you can't just give in and slouch on the sofa and watch Netflix. Like that would be like just giving into the mold, but actually like pushing back.
Yeah, you'll be part of it. In other words, you're pushing back, push the crowd back. When I was in the police, if there's a crowd control, push the crowd back. If you didn't, the crowd would come and just go all over you.
Just a bit of a story. You just reminded me of a little story. It's a bit off subject, but I listened to a great sermon around the authority of Jesus, and it was to do with a policeman on a street, and it helped me really understand how we can use that in that pushing back. So they explained authority. So a policeman can be stood on a road and do this with his hand to the traffic, and the traffic will follow his instructions, but it's not by his own power.
No.
Because if it was, he can't actually physically push the cars down the road or that way, but it's because he's got authority to do that.
Yes, correct.
So they were saying we have authority. Jesus is our authority. He's the head, we're the body.
Yep.
And he gives us the authority, like that policeman, to push back on anything in the spiritual, anything that's going on. So I just thought it was a really good picture. You just reminded me of like how we have authority. We can't see, but we know, and then we can use that to push back, to keep pushing back the darkness, pushing back.
That is exactly what it's all about. That is perfect, because I say I've stood in the middle of London and put my hand up, and all the traffic's just stopped, as you just said. And the same principle, when the evil's coming at you, put your hand up.
Yeah, and it's not by your own physical strength.
No.
The authority given you.
Exactly, the authority that was given to me. Traffic. It wasn't my authority, it was given to me. Now you've got authority from God to do the same against evil. No. And that's why I say when we hear some of the terrible things that they're trying to drum into children and us even, we say no. No, exactly.
Yeah, and I think to be mindful of who you're giving authority, who else you're giving authority to.
Yes.
Times I've really questioned that, like who in different contexts of your life, like are you comfortable with who you're giving authority to?
Yeah, you got to. You got to. Well. Goodness, yeah. You just got to be. This is the time to be discerning. Discern everything. You got to, because if you're not being discerning, we can be hoodwinked and got out by the enemy.
Yeah.
Can I just say a quick hello now to Ken and Mary, who's been watching these chats we go.
Yeah, hello guys, lovely to hear you're enjoying them. We are. I think we're gonna probably bring that to a close. I haven't been watching the clock, I've just been too busy talking, but
we've done well. We're
always roughly around an hour.
Yeah, we're an hour and 21 minutes.
Are we?
Yeah, we've done great.
That was just flies. So we had a brief chat about what we might talk about next, because there's not where it might lead, but actually you said it might be a deep but interesting to talk about suicide.
Because a lot of it going on, sadly.
Yeah, that's true. And that reason. So for various reasons that's come up, and we're going to follow that lead. So next time we'll talk more specifically around that, and then we'll just do what we do and open up to wherever that leads us.
The spirit always leads. That's the first. Always let the spirit lead, because we'd make a mess of it.
Yeah, give up trying to control things. Okay, well, thank you very much. Look forward to next time, and thank you for your time.
Right, Clem. Thank you, Clem.
Yeah,
thank you.
That's all right. No offense.
No.
Right, I'm going to switch off record now and see you next time. Thank you, Rod.
God bless.